It is almost 20 to 8 on this Friday morning, and delighted to say it, Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Hi Adrian, how are you?
How are you keeping?
I can't see, but I can hear you. I think Owen is with you, is he?
He is, yeah.
How are you, Ronan?
We're both here. Yeah, and
never the same when you can't read the body language. But
well, you're normally known for your technical expertise, Roland. So I'm surprised.
Yeah, but I know when you're pushing me towards a certain subject, I can potentially push you the other way. You know?
Nothing potential about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Come here. Obviously, you've had a few days to digest events in Paris now at this point. Are the French sur la lune over there still?
No, I don't think so. I think, in fairness to them, they probably put a big focus on Ireland, but we're Friday before the next game, so like Greg Aldred, Winnie Antonio, they've been in getting physio and do fitness sessions and kind of moving on. That's what I suppose top players do. The Ireland is over, it's on to the next one, and I'm sure the coaching ticket will be previewing a little bit more than the players, but the players that are in La Rochelle are kind of moving on, and I think they realise France in Scotland is a tricky fixture, especially the way I think we all agree that you don't really know exactly what you get from Scotland. They beat England at home, and then they go to Wales with confidence and they perform like that.
I think there's a sense during the week that on this side anyway, that like the right team won, albeit that a couple of bits had gone away. Maybe we could have got out of there with a win. When you were walking out of the stadium on Saturday, what was your main thought about? What were you discussing about? If we won't beat France until, or was there one thing that kind of?
Yeah, I think upon reflection and obviously with the passing of days, I think your thoughts become more crystallised. I suppose I would be hesitant to put the game in the classic context, just for one reason, because in classic game the lead ebbs and flows. France controls the scoreboard from minute 0 to 80, i.e. the lead never changed. For me, that would equate to a classic contest, but it's very rare at this level between, I suppose, two very good teams that you have one, I suppose, dominant force in the fact that France just set the pace, they kept the pace, and it's hard to really know how much France have left just on that basis alone, if you understand me.
Joey Carbery, and you're right about him in your Examiner column this morning. He's been obviously a big talking point post-match as well. The analysis of him obviously comes with the shadow of the other lad, but just maybe first of all to kick it off, a bit of a conversation about him. What was the thing that impressed you most about him?
I thought his calmness and his poise and his mental discipline not to force things like chip kicks, little grubbers through, sticking to task. I think it's very hard for experienced players, Adrian, to, you can see the try after 80 seconds. Like the plan kind of changes, but it doesn't if you stick to what you agree to. But like with the start France got, all of a sudden you're thrown out of kilter. If you're an inexperienced 10 at test level and you're in the Stade de France, that's not a great starting point. But for him to see his team go another 10 points down, and then I suppose his capacity to believe that how he was managing the game was the right thing. And then you saw Ireland when they had their purple patch, they scored 2 unanswered tries. You mean that? I think that's testament to probably the game management of Carbery.
What he was on with the lads during the week, and he's like his personality, and look at again, it's very difficult to discuss Joey Carbery, and I'm sure it's actually frustrating for him without mentioning Johnny Sexton, and they are very different personalities. Like Sexton, I was going to say he's almost a bit like yourself in terms of his assuredness around the pitch. Carbery seems like from a personality point of view he's a very different person. Yeah,
but they're at very different ends of the scale too, and the fact one is probably you know what I mean, starting off his journey as a test out half. It was a great start at the weekend from. I think that will be his reference points when he does come across loss of form and challenges, to know that he can do that with such, I suppose, little game time in his brain and in his legs. But like, Johnny's at the opposite end. Johnny has very little to prove. If you know, he's a proven winner, and he does exactly what it says on the tin. But I think it would be a big error. You don't want them to be similar. You want them to have different personalities, but they will always be different because of the age gap between them, and also because of the fact that Johnny has achieved so much in the game that I think Joe will probably go to another level altogether when Johnny isn't in the squad.
Yeah, and like the difficulty for him at that point might be that I'd have to look up now, but he'll be 27, probably close enough to it after the World Cup. Like on the personality aspect of it, like
but the World Cup is still 18 months away. That's so long in sport too. You know, he's 27, but that means he's 25 now. You know, so you have to put building blocks in place. You can't just expect Joey to kind of, okay, he's done that game against France and now he's back in whatever on the bench or playing for Munster, and then we roll him out for the World Cup. Like, you don't know where his ceiling is. I think in that position, especially at that age, the upside to him is huge. You got to roll him out. You got to roll him out. You got to keep playing him. You know what I mean? Then, you mean in Johnny's head that doesn't work, and rightly so, because he's a competitor. Because 2 and 1 doesn't go. But that's where managing your players come into it, and I think that's very, very important. But up to probably Saturday, there was a big difference between the caliber of Johnny's performances and the rest of the I would say the other pretenders looking to I suppose lay claim to that jersey. I think what we established after Saturday is the fact that this level, test level, top level games away in France, in New Zealand, does not faze Joey Carbery. Athletic wise, we know he is very, very good. I suppose the biggest probably challenge I would, from the outside looking, was is his kicking game good enough for the Northern Hemisphere? Because we play on wet pitches for 7-8 months of the year. That's the reality. While down south you play on dry pitches for nearly 6 months of the year, and you can see that Joey's ball skills are really, really good. His kicking game needs continuous work to be a top test player. Was his goal kicking top notch at the weekend? Yes, it was. Was his line kicking from penalties top notch? It was. Game management, did he turn the French? High balls, Hugo Keenan got on the end of one of them. So tactically, I think that was very good. But I think I keep going back, I think, to the try he created for Keith Earls in Murrayfield. His capacity on the ball is freakish, and the fact that he went through 2 Scottish forwards, I think, put the 2 of them on their backside, accelerated, changed the ball from left to right, went on a kind of a slalom run, and then whipped out a delicious pass to Earlsy to score. That's Dan Carter-esque in the fact that his running game, but I think what needs to be established before that is just his basics, just continuous work needed on his basics.
Like what? If you were sitting down with him Monday morning, what are you saying to him?
I think I was staying square at the line, catch pass, and getting a second touch in attack. And then I just think his kicking game and his capacity to probably manipulate defences is always ongoing. But you have to probably give him huge credit for the fact that to be able to do that with such little rugby is a huge accomplishment.
You're saying there, Ronan, are you to keep throwing him into the starting team?
Yeah, I think you have to. I firmly believe that. I think that you just you've got to see now how he backs up his performance. The more you play in the 10 jersey, the better you get. Ideally you're playing 3 or 4 games. You know what I mean? But then that's what's best for Joey Carbery. I'm not talking about what's best for the team here, because on form Johnny's a better 10 than him, but in the ruthlessness of professional sport, that could change if Johnny, or if Joey got 6 or 7 tests in a row. With the age profile, with the World Cup, with the end goal. If you're playing a final tomorrow, Johnny Sexton starts. That's for me non-negotiable.
Where then do Ireland, I guess, make their big leap if they're looking for one between now and next year? Because if you're looking at that French team and I guess the age of the French team, you can definitely point to ways in which they're going to get better between now and the World Cup at home for France. Where do you identify those areas for Ireland?
That's a good question. I think you're looking for minimal gains in a number of areas. At the top level on, it comes down to fine margins, and you're used to hearing that in every sport. From a rugby point of view, I think you look at how France started that game, and to go 10-0 up is just a huge advantage. I think what people probably neglect on the outside is the progress, I suppose, the Irish forwards have made with ball in hand. I think that has been startling for me in a short period of time. Just, it was a joy to watch, I suppose, Tadhg Furlong take on the defensive line at the weekend and play little tips to his forwards or out the back to a back who was engaged in that pod. So I think for what we're seeing since November is that Ireland with the ball are very, very dangerous. I still think there's probably room to grow in an attacking kicking game. Identifying, have they won in the backfield? If there's one in the backfield and you're going against 13 in the front line, I think you can probably get reward from attacking kicks. That I think that will happen when you can't expect that from someone like Joey Carbery in his first game in Paris, and you just be kind of hopeful that he is scanning to see if the space is there. I think it's one thing recognising space and not executing, but it's a different issue altogether if you're not recognising where the space is. I think probably France on a roll. I think it could have ended 37 points unless for the heroics of Dan Sheehan at the end of the game. However, he managed to get a hand under Jaminet was an incredible bit of, I suppose, athleticism or bravery or whatever the word is for that. But that, I think, you mean the further you go in competitions, the more defence wins championships. So going into the deep stages of a World Cup, you cannot concede 37 points. That's something I think that they'll look to get a lot more stingy on. So for the England, Welsh and Scottish game, the Italian, Scottish and English game, there'll be a big focus on points conceded, but that's not the language they'll use. They'll use to kind of control the ball, and if controlling possession means that you've more chance, obviously, of you enforcing your game plan on the opposition, which hence means they have less time with the ball. But then sometimes those statistics are blown out of the water that some teams with deadly counter-attack can score, tries in 10 seconds. But generally that is the plan, I think, going forward.
Is there any debate, Ronan, about the scrum half position now, or who's starting there? Is that sort of, I'm sure Conor Murray won't think this way, but is that kind of done and dusted now, or is there still a live conversation to be had?
That would be the biggest mistake I think you'd make about this team, because I think you look at the outside in and what is evident is competition for places. The debate in the short term, i.e. the next 2 games, is not evident. But in any position with the Irish team, with the strength and depth, I suppose the questioning point or the re-questioning, or when does it come up for debate? You have a leverage of 2 games. That's probably the reality of what is happening in modern sport. Credit in the bank, big game players, there are one or two exceptions in each and every team, but in general, 20 of probably 23 players, you have to keep producing. You have to keep producing. Look how much of a lift, I suppose, Robbie Henshaw gives his team when they see Henshaw for Aki. Beautiful. It's not that Aki didn't have a good day. He was probably a little bit less quiet than you, or less probably busy than usual. But Aki for Henshaw has to become the norm. That's the strength we have. Henderson coming in. I think that's where the game is going, because in my time it was definitely the strongest 15 starting. We've said on this station loads of times that a lot of coaches look to finish with their strongest team, but competition for places, especially like getting into the Irish 23, should be extremely difficult. And I think we saw for the French game with guys like Coombs and Lowry and Hume, and not making the 23. You have to have that. If there's who's going to be my last back for the bench, it's not a good template.
Ronan, there's a couple of other things that you wanted to ask you about. If we kind of like move away from last week's game against France for a bit, it's been a fairly busy couple of days on the news agenda for rugby in general, because I'm sure you'll have seen this idea of a World Nations Championship in the offing. It's not entirely divorced from the potential movement of South Africa. Granted, not for a few years now, they've committed to 2025 to the Rugby Championship, but if they were to move to the Six Nations or have a greater attachment to Northern Hemisphere rugby, it probably adds more question marks about this World Nations Championship that could be coming down the line. Basically, a more trophy-based run through the summer and through the autumn internationals, which would allow for the teams going down to the Southern Hemisphere to move between different countries as opposed to doing 3 test tours in one country. When this came up a couple of years ago, Owen Farrell brought up player welfare, saying that this is a real concern for players, that this thing will be happening because it's extra games and an already packed calendar. From a former playing standpoint and from a current coaching standpoint, when you see stories like this emerge, are you a little bit worried as well, or are you thinking, great, this will be good for the game?
Yeah, I wouldn't be worried at all. I think you just have to ask what opportunities are coming from this and who benefits from this. Is it a really well thought out plan, or is it a plan on a whim? I think that's very, very important, because what people in whatever game you're involved in, I think there has to be an appreciation for history. The Six Nations Championship is a fantastic tournament, and it's very you want to have a very, very good reason to manipulate, to change, or to alter the format of that, because I think one of the values of rugby is respect, and in terms of respecting the Six Nations, I think there can be proposals for relegation for Italy, Georgia, Portugal, Spain, whoever wants to come in and try and grow their game. But you have a fantastic competition with there. Would it be better with South Africa? I think from a rugby point of view, you'd have to say it would be same if you were having Australia and New Zealand to the competition, but that isn't a Six Nations competition. It's a new competition. So I think there's endless possibilities about which way you can alter this. Do you have the Four Nations Championship and the top 2 playoff against the winners of the Six Nations? It becomes mouth-watering, the prospects that can happen. I suppose what gets lost in a lot of this is that who the players belong to. Do the players belong to the nations? Are we going to go down the route where it's Club Ireland and there becomes an international game, and below that there becomes a club game? Or are you still going to have a place in the rugby calendar for the bouclier, the premiership, with hundreds of years of history with the Six Nations competition? I think there is probably potential to explore this, and there is, I think, an appetite for a world championship, be that at club level or test level. Probably both are appealing, but I think what's important here is that it's very, very well thought out, and it adds to the calendar as opposed to creates a headache for the calendar.
And just finally, Claremont tomorrow night at home. It's yourselves, Stad and Claremont sort of tightly bunched trying to pierce into that top six. Are you table watching just yet, or fixture watching?
Yeah, well, exactly. You have to be realistic and conscious of where you are in the standings. So I'm aware of that. So we've had a difficult patch the last number of weeks for a number of reasons, but it's time to find solutions. So we're hoping that will start tomorrow night. It'll be a very tough game with a lot of new guys called into French camp, distractions with that, a few injuries, but they're excuses. We've got a good panel. We're at home, so we're looking forward to it.
All right, good stuff, Ronan. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. See you on.
Thanks a lot, Ronan O'Gara on the line there from La Rochelle, and lots of interesting thoughts obviously on the reaction to Ireland-France last weekend. And we're going to have coming up a little bit later on, we're going to be talking to the Ireland international Hugo Keenan to get his own thoughts on exactly how that game went for him and his review of it afterwards as well. It's 7:58, it's Friday morning, you're watching OTB AM. We're delighted to have you along with us. Plenty of comments coming in, and do keep them fired into us over the course of the morning. We'll put them to our guests and indeed read them out as we work through the morning.